All right, Lainey, take us away.
Hi, I'm Lainey Zell. I just got ordained from the cantorial program, and it's about time. And it is a long process. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's 5 years is a big chunk of time, but it's really worth it to get to where you want to go. If you really believe in becoming a rabbi or a cantor, it's really worth it. I got to I kind of figured it out in a I took a hiatus from college for a few years and was trying to figure things out, and it all of a sudden just clicked for me one day. And so I started looking into it, and they were like, well, if you want to come to HEC, you need a bachelor's. So I scrambled back off to college and finished, and then started at HEC right afterwards. And almost immediately, I figured out that I didn't want to be a synagogue cantor. I was recruited by the military chaplains, and as of Friday, I am officially selected for active duty chaplaincy in the Navy. So
All right. Jake, why don't you go next?
Sure, I'm Jake Petzold. I use he, him pronouns. I'm here in Los Angeles, which is also where I grew up. And I first started thinking I'm a fourth year, rising fifth year, I guess, in the rabbinical program here. And I guess I started thinking about the rabbinate like towards the end of college, and then more or less decided against it. And by that point, I was already pretty committed to or like down a path for a career in politics and communications. And then I did that. I was a political speechwriter and then a executive communications consultant and advisor to like some politicians, but mostly CEOs and billionaires and philanthropists and the like. And I was over it for a bunch of reasons. And I basically turned back to the rabbinate being a thing that I'd thought about before, and also potentially like going to get a PhD and trying to do the more like the academic, professorial thing, not in Judaism, not necessarily in Judaism, I should say, like something in history or American studies. And the pandemic happened, and I just, for a bunch of reasons, was moved to do this. And as for some personal background, personal introduction, I'm 33 and I've got a couple of kids. I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old. We started our first year, which was on Zoom, which was our year in Israel was on Zoom, and I was living in Brooklyn, and we moved back here to be with my folks. And be with family, and that's my sort of that's my rabbinical school journey in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Lauren, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I use she, her pronouns. I am in my final year of cantorial school, and I also did the education program. So I'm usually on the New York campus, but last year I was on the LA campus where I got to know these two a little bit better. And it was great. I'm from New York originally, so I'm literally like living right now, not too far from where I grew up. I majored in music in college and voice performance, thought that's what I wanted to do. Kind of pretty close to graduation, I realized that was not for me. And so I moved home with my family, and I ended up working at a synagogue as one of their full-time educators and leading services. And through that experience was like, oh, maybe I'll do education, maybe I'll do cantorial. And I was like, you know what, there are rabbi educators, why not cantorial educators? And so I ended up doing that. I do want my focus to be on pulpit work and for the things that I learned in the ed school to kind of guide me in all the things that I do. And I guess on a personal note, I'm married to a rabbinical student who I met in my year in Israel, and I was there with Lainey. That's all.
I suppose I could ask you then, how did you envisage your path then? Because it was probably quite differently, right, Lauren?
In what?
Well, you met your partner in your year in Israel, so.
Oh, yeah, so it is a little different. Actually, I really changed his path. He was supposed to go to the Los Angeles campus. This was back when you had to apply into different campuses. Now you can go wherever you like. So he had to do a whole appeal because he was supposed to go to LA, and then I made him go this way. But he did the education year also, and I didn't go in knowing that I wanted to definitely do education. I was like, all right, let's do cantorial. If I still want to do education, then I'll do it. But then I saw he was doing it also. So I was like, all right, this was really meant to be. So
Awesome. All right, Hannah, tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Bloomberg. I'm a rising fifth-year rabbinical student on the Los Angeles campus, and I'm also an alumni of the Zellico School of Jewish Nonprofit Management. I grew up in Ohio, in Cleveland, and went to the University of Rochester for undergrad. My undergraduate degrees are in neuroscience and psychology, so I actually started out on the pre-med path. I still love the field of medicine, but somewhere during school realized that there was something missing for me in terms of how I wanted to interact with people in my profession that just I wasn't feeling like I was going to be able to get in the medical field. So I firmly committed myself to not having a path for a long time. I was like, I'm just going to explore and see where it takes me. And that ended up taking me to Israel for a year. I moved there for a Masa program, ended up working for Hillel as a springboard fellow for quite a few years, leading up to rabbinical school, and a combination of Hillel and working for a Jewish summer camp where I was the liaison between clergy people and the camp staff, really sort of cracked open my understanding of who could be a clergy and, you know, what does being a clergy person actually mean, look like, what are the different roles that one can play, and getting to interact with 60 plus clergy people over the course of a summer really broke some of the notions I felt I had and helped me to envision what it could look like for me to play one of those roles, but not only play one of those roles, but like carve out for myself what my version of the rabbinate could look like. And I ended up at HUC.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hannah. You all have had such different pathways to get to this point. Once you chose HUC, once you got on this pathway, was there like a moment you were like, I feel like maybe Lainey is maybe best to answer this because you have had such a different path, but is there a moment where you were like, hold up, I don't know if this is really what I want to do, but maybe I could do this instead, or however it looked for you?
Once I decided to become clergy, that was never in question. How I was going to do that changed, because I feel like when you feel like this is the right path for you, at least for me, opportunities and doors just started opening, and it was up to me to step through them. And like, for instance, within a couple months of being in Israel, the military chaplains came and gave a presentation on our campus, and I immediately was like, oh, puzzle piece clicked into place. So then I kept in touch with them, and then I was introduced almost immediately to Cantor Fromer, who is the only other cantor in the military at the moment, and he has been, since then, basically for the last 4 years and change, became a really important friend and mentor of mine, and has sort of helped guide me and keep me kind of steadfast in the process. And I think I am unusual in that I found exactly where I wanted to be and what community I wanted to be in almost immediately. And it colored the way that I looked at everything, from like all the work that you have to do for school, all the little pieces of busy work and the red tape and all that stuff. You just get through it because you know on the other side is what you're supposed to be doing. And so for me, this last year I've been working at West Point, as my student pulpit because, and I gave up a full-time pulpit that was a lot more money, because for me, being able to put on the uniform every couple of weeks and remind myself, like, you're so close, you're almost there, helped me really contextualize my final year because, like I said, 5 years is a long time, and you can sometimes lose track of the end when it's like just around the corner. So for me, it was a matter of like sort of resetting every year and really setting intentions and going in with a hope and a plan that, like, what is useful to me, what can I let go, because there are moments when you can't complete everything 100%. You can't get everything done on time. You're gonna have to ask for extensions, and all of those things kind of pile on, and you have to say, okay, I need to prioritize here. Who's gonna give me the best path to success, and how can I set myself up for success? And so it, like, having that goal in mind really helped me formulate that plan.
It sounds like your moments happened in the form of connections that you made along your path. Hannah, Lauren, or Jake, do you have other things that came up for you in your path that maybe changed your direction or changed your thought process?
Yeah. I think mine, when I thought about this question, I think my answer is I I think a bit broader in terms of I brought in like I started school thinking I will absolutely never be a congregational rabbi. It was not what I saw for myself. I definitely have a passion for nonprofit spaces and like the opportunities to serve a unique mission in a way that's just different from a congregation. But despite thinking that that was never something that I want to do, during my third year, I took a rabbinic internship with Temple Akiba of Culver City, and truthfully, like, fell in love with the pulpit role, in the sense that I loved the opportunity to be involved in both these like minute moments in life, but also the big like life cycle moments and helping to support families and really being connected in that way. I deeply love Jewish liturgy. And so getting the opportunity to lead services and connect my congregants with, hi Lainey, but getting to connect with my congregants over liturgy and help them to think about it in new ways was something that I absolutely didn't anticipate. So I would not say that at this point in time, I have totally shifted to being like, okay, I'm definitely going to be a congregational rabbi. But I am open to it in a way that I wasn't when I started school. And also I think I've expanded my thinking around sort of the finality of taking one path versus the other. I feel much more like, just because I start in a pulpit or not in a pulpit right out of school, I am very much realizing like does not dictate the step that comes after that. And so I think there's sort of a flexibility and a fluidity that I have within myself and my own expectation of my rabbinate, that has sort of expanded in a lot of ways. And I actually am grateful for the fact that I think there are a number of roles that I think I would be really happy in, because there are so many things that I think about now in terms of what I need from a role and what I need from my rabbinate that weren't considerations when I started. When I started rabbinical school, I was just like newly dating this guy that like now I'm getting married to in a few months. And so there have been like changes in that sense of what it looks like to balance my own career aspirations with his, and what it looks like to desire building a family and think about like sort of the what I need from my life as a person, in cooperation with what I want for my life as a rabbi. So I think a lot of things have shifted, but I'm grateful for the way that rabbinical school has sort of cracked open the possibilities for me.
I think that's the exciting part about learning in general, but lifelong learning. I mean, I'm sure everyone here in this room can speak to the fact that every time you learn something, it kind of changes or at least broadens your perspective, or, you know, your knowledge in general, and you take that with you. And Hannah, I really loved your statements about like saying, I now know there's a lot of different things that I can do. I'm not just becoming a rabbi. I could do any of these number of things that I think I would enjoy. And I know that's been a problem for me in my life, as I get bored easily. And I'm always like, what else can I do now? Let's just reinvent myself again or do something different. And I think it's hard sometimes for people to think about, I went to school to do X. How can I possibly do something different? But it's still a matter of learning and continuing to learn. Jake and Lauren, I'd love to hear from either of you or both of you about sort of that piece for you as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, I think, I don't know, my experience, coming later, I don't know how relevant it is, but I also think that I have perhaps something to share, is having like thought about rabbinical school like right when I was graduating college. Like I went to HUC open houses and did the whole thing, in my first year out of school as an undergraduate. And then there's another almost 8 years before I was back. The big moments for me have been things that have happened, Hannah alluded to this, but the big moments for me have been things that have happened outside of school. So I came to HUC sort of, I had this career in public affairs, and I have this idea that I want to do some of my first career within the rabbinate and bring the rabbinate to that a little bit. I also have had this idea that like I want to be people's rabbi and do the pulpit. And I had sort of come in, I'd accepted that I could, or, desired to do both, but had come in with the idea of like, I'm going to come out and do the pulpit, and then I'm going to go have another career. From that, I will launch into writing or organizational work or something else. And I'll just, subject myself to the placement process and see what happens. And after moving here with my family, like the first year was hard for my wife, who never spent much time here, to like connect. And it just like took a while to build a community, and then it became home. And so now that is just the reality of my life, is like, that's the first filter, is like my family life, and the commitments that I have to other people. And so that, in some sense it narrows my options. I think, the rabbinate is still big enough to do a lot of things. And you have to be nimble and entrepreneurial to do those things if you're going to be off the sort of established path. But I think I do see clearly just the realities of having to. I mean, it would be a very different rabbinical school experience for me had I gone 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. I think might be something to consider. Like this is hard, and there's also benefits to it.
Lauren, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I could just add like 2 quick things that came to mind. One is this shift of knowing what I wanted to do with the additional master's degree in education. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it. I knew I wanted to do pulpit work, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to be labeled as cantor educator, or if I wanted to just concentrate on education. And through my time at school, I've realized that like, okay, I do want to do pulpit work, and I don't want to have a big concentration on education. And then the other shift that was kind of unexpected is, so I'm from New York. I like never really left New York. I went to school in New Jersey, like kind of stayed pretty close to home. I didn't even know how to drive. And so going out to LA, I was really nervous. I like literally took my driver's test 2 days before I had to leave, signed up for like 8 classes. I did fine, thank God. But I was like, I only see myself ever being in New York and being able to experience a different city. I'm like, okay, like I could see myself being somewhere else that's not New York, and it doesn't seem as scary anymore.
Love that. I also, you just got your license and then you drove in LA traffic.
Oh, not just on LA traffic, on Mulholland Drive, nonetheless.
Wow, that's really impressive. I used to live in the Bay Area, and when we drive down to LA, I just dreaded every second of it, like 2 hours out. So I get it. I want to ask the last question that we kind of had planned for this, but I don't want to leave Rachel and Annie out, and I failed to ask if either of you want to share. Are you interested in what programs are you interested in or thinking about pursuing, and why did you join us today? Go ahead, Rachel.
It's okay, Annie, you were fast as the unmute button.
Oh, sure. Okay. Hey, I'm Annie. I have a little bit of a cold right now, so I hope people can hear me okay. But
You're
right now I'm a junior going into my senior year at Oberlin College. And I'm considering applying to rabbinical school later on. Initially, I transferred in this year from a 2-year college called Deep Springs College, which is sort of experimental kind of college. It's also an operational cattle ranch. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's sort of self-governed. And then I was after that took a gap year and was interning at this sort of community nonprofit in rural Wisconsin. And I guess sort of in both of those contexts, I was just really interested in the role of community leadership and sort of the need for stronger, smaller communal spaces in a lot of aspects of the US. So I'm interested in that. Yeah, so it's a little bit further out. Obviously, it wouldn't be directly next year. I still have a year left of school, but I just thought it was.
Are you a junior this year?
I'm going into my senior year.
You are your senior year.
Yeah, so I figured it was probably time to start
Yeah.
putting out some feelers to different places.
Well, I think if it's questions that you already have coming up, you're in the right place and you're asking the right questions, and you're, joining places that are helping you to maybe understand your grounding or your place a little bit better. Thank you for sharing. I don't want to stretch your voice anymore, but thank you so much. Rachel, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, and Annie, hope we feel better as soon as possible. It's nice to see you all, meet you all. I'm Rachel, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here in New York City, specifically Astoria. I very much resonate with the topic of this talk because my life and career has definitely ping-ponged in lots of different directions. I went to school for and started my career in the theater world as a dramaturg developing new plays and musicals. And then as the pandemic hit and also a variety of other factors, I moved into the Jewish nonprofit world. And I'm primarily interested in the rabbinic program. But I think generally, I'm just so interested in the ways that ancient Jewish wisdom can be brought into a modern context to provide connection and healing. And one of the things that really appeals to me about A2C is the opportunity to tap into that from multiple points of view. So I'm also interested in the nonprofit management program because I think like ethics in best management practices, it would be important to wherever my future ends up, particularly if I end up a rabbi. I would love to delve more into more formal educational training. So there are classes in the ed school that interest me. I love singing and I love liturgy. I don't know that I'm necessarily cut out for the full-blown cantorial program, but the idea of like being on New York's campus and having some access to those courses as well appeals to me. So I'm very much in an exploratory stage, and I'm grateful for all of your stories to help figure that out.
I'm so glad you're here. This is a really great conversation for you. You're right. I mean, being that Hannah has done rabbinical program and nonprofit management, Lauren is in education and cantorial. And Jake, I'm sorry, I didn't ask you and I apologize. Are you doing nonprofit management or education or anything in addition to rabbinical? Okay. So
no, starting school with children already. I was not trying to add more time.
That was your second program. I think that it's interesting because we do have such a mix of students who can do so many different parts of our different programs as well and electives. You're going to hopefully find your foundation, Rachel. Don't worry. Let's keep having conversations like this though, because I think it's important. You don't have to whittle it down as you're hearing. You don't have to just choose one thing if you don't want to. So just keep that in mind. Because we're a small group today, I'm going to ask our final question, and then please, if you all have questions, we're open to answering whatever you have for us. My last question is for Hannah, Lauren, and Jake. What advice would you give to your younger or past self that maybe would be helpful to Rachel and Annie? Is that a difficult question?
It is. And also, I think there's a lot I wish I could tell my younger self, but I think that the two things that jump out, one is the reminder that I don't need to know the path before starting the journey. Just like the permission to figure it out as I go, I think is something that I really wish I'd had more confidence in myself, in my abilities to figure it out as I go. Just because I think I really felt I put a lot of pressure on myself to have the answers at various points in time, and that didn't always serve me. So I think that's the first. And then the second is they're related, but like focusing more on the questions than the answers. Because at least for myself, I oftentimes felt that I was so wrapped up in the answers that I got good at reciting my answer to the questions of like, what are you doing next? Like, what do you want? What do you, this, that, one, and the other, that I oftentimes forgot to check in with myself about whether that answer was still true. And so I have since developed more of an attachment to the questions, and really like keep lists of questions for myself to check in periodically in a notebook, and like just really giving myself the permission to change my answers over time.
Very nice. Jake or Lauren, you want to go next?
I can go next. I took a little bit of a long time to decide on HUC. I'd gone to like 3 or 4 years of open houses and was like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. And I think the biggest stumbling block in front of me was I was comparing myself to the people that I saw there. And I was like, I'm not like everyone else. I don't know Hebrew as well as everyone else. I'm not going to fit in. This isn't really for me. And then now being a student and almost done, realizing how unique everyone is in school. People bring all different things with them. People are interested in all different types of things, and everyone has both their strengths and their weaknesses, and it doesn't have to look like everyone around you.
That is really great advice, because I know your current role right now at HUC. For Rachel and Annie, if you are in New York and you want to visit the campus, Lauren potentially could be your guide. So she works with us as part of the Office of Recruitment and Admissions to help people just like her to visit the campus and meet people and see what your fit is like. And I know when I was at the campus a couple months ago, meeting Lauren was amazing. And everyone that I talked to that she had helped said how amazing it was that they finally felt their fit, or they felt like it was they were part of a community when they came there. So just so you know, I'm putting the plug in. Campus visits are really important to understanding your fit within a certain community. And so do it, you'll know, and then you know if you can continue pursuing where you want to go to school. It's really important, no matter where that institution is. It's always visit the campus if you can. Thank you, Lauren. Jake?
I want to answer the question about advice, and also I want to say something about campus visits. As far as advice, look, I love my life, and love, like, my family. Wouldn't trade that, the things that got me to where I am right now for anything. And also, like, there's no question that school would have been easier doing it at an earlier portion of my life, and at an earlier stage of my life. And if I'd really been, I just wasn't ready, but like if I'd really been thinking about the Rabbit, like it all happened very fast for me, but like, I didn't have time to linger on that one. So, and yeah, and the part of that, so part of that is it would be easier. And the other thing is I would have been able to say yes to more things. There are trips available to HUC students and, an intensive in this city or a project in that city or, just different kinds of things that you can do, out of town pulpits for the high holidays. Just like stuff that I would love to, going to conferences, just like stuff that I would have loved to in a different chapter of my life, like would have tried to reach for. And I just, could basically try and do one thing that's not curricular, one extracurricular thing at school, basically a year or maybe one a semester. And so it's just, these are trade-offs, and it's not that again. So I advise considering, the potential to bring total vigor to it. And then the other thing I want to say about campus visits is, yeah, definitely do them. And also, I ultimately came to Los Angeles visiting the campus because it was COVID and I was in New York and it was just a crazy time. I think one of the things that's different about applying to rabbinical school compared to other graduate programs is, other graduate programs, like where you go to school matters, and not that where you go to school if you want to be a rabbi doesn't matter, but like the question is like, do you want it? To me, the more salient question is, do you want to choose the rabbinate, or the cantorate? Do you want to choose this life? Rather than, is this where you want to go to school for the next 5 years? Like in the scheme of, is this the life that I want? Like, what vibe do I get on campus? Like, you need to be comfortable, it needs to be doable. But that just, I think, is much, much less on the scales than is this the life for me?
Awesome. You all have such different perspectives, or your journey's been so different. It's just really refreshing to hear that you each have sort of a different piece of our population. You, Jake, are someone who is grounded in where you're at, and Lauren, even to some extent in New York or whatever, and Hannah, and it's just like where you want to go is so unique and different. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing about yourselves. I'm actually going to share a little bit because Jake just inspired me. I decided when I was almost 40 that I wanted to do a PhD suddenly. And so I decided that I only wanted to do a PhD overseas, because part of that journey for me was being able to travel as much as I wanted. And so I literally finished my master's degree, applied for a PhD, and my husband and I sold everything. It was just the two of us and our two cats. We sold everything and moved abroad. And I went to 36 countries in 4 years and loved living abroad every minute of it. And then there was the part where I had to do the PhD piece that I didn't love, but I still did it. It felt forced, but I did it. But the point I'm trying to make is that while Jake couldn't take advantage of a lot of those opportunities because he was invested in his family and his environment, his community, I was trying to do the opposite. I felt like I had been doing that for so long that I was ready for something different that takes you in a million different directions, and you learn outside of the classroom because you're living in a different place and all of this. Anyway, I digress, but you inspired me, Jake, so thank you. I just think it's important to share that no matter what journey each of us are on, that, I like to say I never have regrets about anything, because if something happens, like breaking my foot in Peru 2 weeks ago, then it happened for a reason, probably, and it is what it is, and we'll move on and learn from it, right? So with that being said, Rachel, Annie, I want to open it up to you. And Annie, if you don't feel like you can ask questions, feel free to type them in chat. We don't want you to strain your voice anymore. But we'd love to hear from you if you have any other questions. And then other than that, we'll head out for the end of the day.
Well, I can chime in and hopefully give Annie a chance to type. I'm so appreciating this conversation that Jake and Michelle, you're both bringing up about just the way you approach school based on, what's going on in your life. And I think like this entire conversation opens up, like, for me, word sentences. I'm trying to string them together. Thank you for bearing with me. I guess as somebody who, both is several years out of school and in the working world now, and as somebody with multiple interests, I think I'd be curious to hear more on your perspectives, specifically on like the decision to go all in as a full-time student for 5 to 6 years versus doing a part-time study program and continuing with your professional life. If that was a question that factored into any of your decisions, I'd be very curious how you approach it.
Was that something that was an option for any of you?
I never really considered the part-time thing because, like, part-time student, you know, a lower engagement thing, because I really did want to reach for all of it. And the year in Israel, like, you know, like I like it just, even if it wasn't a year, like there's like an experiential component to it. And I also wanted, I mean, I wanted to change. I was trying to change what I was doing. You know, like I said, I want to bring some of that. When I said earlier, I want to bring some of that previous career into the rabbinate. You know, I also was just looking for a change in my life. So I didn't consider it for that reason. And I did, though, continue as a consultant on retainer for some clients for the first 8-9 months of school, even though I was doing full-time school. And that was really hard. That was really hard to do. So I think it's something that is, you know, worth devoting to school.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Jake said at the beginning. And I also, maybe thinking back, like, would I go back and do it differently and do part-time? I probably wouldn't. School's a really long time. I mean, I opted to do an extra year, which is also adding even more time. But like, if you really want to like have this change in your life, and I think it's best to put your whole self into it, because at the end of the day, like, you are going to one day become a cantor, a rabbi, you're going to be a clergy person. And that is like your full whole self going into that.
I forgot to mention before, sorry, I mentioned that Lauren does our tours on the New York campus, but I didn't mention that if you want to visit Los Angeles, you can also see Hannah there. Sorry, Hannah, I left you out.
That's okay. It's all good.
Annie, Rachel, any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I'm also a little bit curious. It sounds like people, it sounds like for a lot of people, sort of these experiences outside of sort of the main program of school, in various sort of pastoral capacities have been really influential. I'm curious to hear more about how people end up doing different sort of like trying out congregational work or like military chaplaincy or things like that.
I can hop in. One of the reasons that I chose to come to HUC was because of the balance between an academic program that is wonderful with brilliant scholars and really, I think, really excellent, combined with the school's intentional focus on fieldwork and professional development coursework. That was something that really was important to me because I wanted to leave rabbinical school not only feeling like a deeply educated Jew, but like someone who was ready to enter the role of rabbi and had a deep understanding of what that demanded of me, what that meant, how to use my voice, and all of these questions that I think are actually really important to have considered from a place of student and not be figuring out in your first few years as a clergy person. So that was, this piece of things is a huge reason why I chose to come to HUC, even though I considered four total rabbinical schools. So the short answer is it's required of us. During the course of school, the expectation, and it looks a little bit different on the Los Angeles campus versus the New York campus, but the expectation is that we are involved in student pulpits, internships, pastoral care internships. So for me, that looked like a couple different roles. I will briefly say something about them so that you know what it looked like for me, but it looks different for every student and by campus. So my second year, I was the student rabbi for a small congregation in Fort Collins, Colorado. And so I visited them. I spent one weekend with them every month and was their rabbi. I led High Holy Day services. They did not have a full-time rabbi. So when I was there, I was rabbi. It's kind of like being thrown into the fire, but in the best way possible, in terms of like really trying on in a real way what it feels like to have that role and to step into that sort of leadership. My third year, I became the rabbinic intern for a congregation in Los Angeles, the one that I mentioned before, which is a smaller congregation. It's about 350 families. And so was playing a role more focused on life cycles and working in the religious school, working with Bar Mitzvah students, and figuring out what it looked like to be part of a bigger system, which felt really different than being the solo rabbi once a month of a teeny tiny congregation. And then this year, my fourth year, I'm the rabbinic intern for a nonprofit organization called Honeymoon Israel, and will be continuing with them next year for my fifth year. And I also had the opportunity to do clinical pastoral education, CPE for short. I was a chaplain in a trauma hospital in Minnesota for a summer. It's like a 400-hour program. So all of those things that I just listed were requirements, but there was a lot of flexibility in terms of deciding what I wanted in each year, what it was that which internship or fieldwork experience would kind of meet the learning goals that I had for myself. And we have a lot of support in like, there's someone at the school who guides this whole process to ask those questions and help you figure out what it looks like to meet those different goals.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Hannah. I was going to ask actually, so do all the students in our rabbinical program, cantorial program, are you assigned a faculty member who then sort of mentors you, or is it someone outside of HUC? How does that work for you?
I'm happy for someone else to answer.
I think our answers are going to be different because
Okay.
Yeah.
it's different on each campus. So why doesn't someone
Okay.
say how it is in LA, and then I can say how it is on the two programs in New York?
Yeah, I would just they assign us a ton of people for various things. In summary, it's probably even not worth throwing out all the details, but like we have someone there's advisors for school. There are people within school who focus on field work, and then there are also assigned external mentors for various aspects of this, and also just a rich, plus you have supervisors, plus and internships, plus there's just a rich array of rabbis trying to talk to young rabbis.
On the New York campus, the rabbinical students have something called group supervision, which they like to call group soup, which is they're broken up, each year is broken up into two smaller groups, and it's facilitated by a faculty member, and they talk about how their internship's going. They bring in different case studies and stuff like that. And then they have their mentor, which is their point person at work, where they're supposed to have an hour every week of mentorship. Cantorial, we only get that. We get who your mentor is in your internship, and you have an hour of mentorship each week. On both programs, you have someone who's in charge of the internships who you could talk to. And in depending on what year you're in, you have different classes that are going to help support you in your internship. In cantorial program, our second and third year, we take a class where we bring in different case studies, talk about moments of growth in our internships. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, being that I'm not a student, I had no idea the level of support you will receive as you go through the programs. It's amazing. I'm sure Annie and Rachel, you have a million more questions that are on your mind or haven't thought of quite yet. And please know that we're all here to help and support you along the way. I want to just make a quick two announcements. One, next month, we're doing a session called Show Me the Money that my colleague Tracy and I are going to do, where we're going to talk about like different fellowships and funding options that you have that aren't just taking out student loans for school anymore. So we're going to present on that. I'll be sharing that with you. You both are signed up for this event, so you'll get that information as well. I'll share a recording from today's sessions in case you want to reflect back. Lainey did share her email, and I'll include that in my message as well. And then the last thing is something that I know wouldn't come up in a session like this, but the importance of Hebrew in starting a cantorial rabbinical program. We like to mention it every chance we get. So if you haven't already thought about Hebrew and when you'll get started, you're welcome to reach out to me and ask any questions because I oversee the seminary Hebrew program. So that being said, does anybody have any final messages they want to share?
Just
Definitely come visit us.
would love to come visit. Just wanted to share deep gratitude and appreciation, and I'm gonna sit with the wisdom that you all shared from your stories and keep formulating more questions. So thank you. And Hannah, enjoy your wedding.
Yeah, thank you guys so
you.
much. It was really helpful.
Good. Thank you both for showing up today. And thank you, Jake and Lauren and Hannah, for being here. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Have the wonderful rest of your day, everyone. And we'll see each other soon.
Thank you.